The desperate Plath morning sun over Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the mining facility when the first explosions shattered the peaceful silence. Commander Sarah Chon was reviewing the weekly production reports when her office windows exploded inward, sending glass fragments across her desk like deadly rain. The attack came without warning, without negotiation, and without mercy. Massive ship-shaped shadows blocked out the orange sun as the Zelthari, Empire's war fleet, descended from orbit like mechanical vultures. Their ships were elegant and deadly, with curved hulls that gleamed like polished bone and weapon ports that glowed with contained energy dots. Sarah stumbled to her feet, blood running down her face from a glass cut, and grabbed her emergency communicator. Outside her window, she could see the mining complex burning. Families were running between buildings, carrying children and whatever possessions they could grab. The Zelthari had given no demands, no ultimatum, no chance for surrender. All personnel, this is Commander Chun, she broadcast across the colonies. Communication network, we are under attack. Evacuation Protocol 7 is now in effect. Get to the underground shelters immediately. The response was chaos. 50,000 humans lived and worked in the Kepler 442b mining colony, making it one of the largest human settlements outside the Sol system. They were miners, engineers, doctors, teachers, and families who had come to this distant world seeking a better life among the stars. None of them were soldiers. None of them were prepared for war. Dr. James Morrison, the colony's chief medical officer, was treating injured civilians in the emergency shelter when Sarah arrived. His surgical scrubs were stained with blood, and his hands shook as he worked on a young girl who had been caught in the bombing of the residential sector. Sarah, thank God, he said without looking up from his patient. We've got over 300 wounded already, and they're still bombing the surface. What do the Zelthari want? Sarah shook her head grimly. They haven't said. No communication, no demands. They just started killing. The truth was worse than either of them knew. 3 hours earlier, Warlord Zexton of the Zelthari Empire had received intelligence reports about the human mining operation on Kepler 442b. The planet contained rare crystalline deposits that the Zelthari needed for their war machines, and they had decided to simply take it. Humans are weak, Zexton had told his officers as their fleet approached the planet. They have no honor, no warrior spirit. They will surrender quickly, and we will use the survivors as slave labor in the mines. The Zelthari were a proud warrior race with a long history of conquest. They stood 8 feet tall, with chitinous exoskeletons and 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Their culture valued strength above all else, and they viewed humanity as a recent arrival to the galactic community that had not yet proven itself worthy of respect. But Zex then had made a critical error in judgment. He had confused humanity's preference for peace with weakness. He had mistaken their diplomatic nature for cowardice, and he was about to learn the difference between mercy and capability. In the underground shelter, Sarah activated the colony's long-range communication array. The equipment was designed for routine contact with Earth and other human settlements, but now she was preparing to send the most important message of her life. This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Kepler 442b mining colony, she began, her voice steady despite the explosions that shook dust from the shelter ceiling. We are under attack by the Zelthari Empire. They are targeting civilian areas without warning or provocation. We have no military defenses. We have no warships. We are not soldiers. She paused, looking around at the frightened faces of the colonists huddled in the shelter. Children were crying in their mothers' arms. Elderly couples held each other tightly. Young men and women who had never seen combat were trying to comfort those even more afraid than themselves. We are 50,000 human beings who came to this world to build something better, Sarah continued. We have families here. We have children here. We are not warriors, but we are human. If anyone can hear this message, if anyone in the galaxy still believes that innocent people deserve protection, please help us. The message was broadcast on all available frequencies, bouncing from relay satellite to relay satellite, racing across the vast distances between stars at the speed of light. It reached trading posts and diplomatic stations, military outposts and civilian settlements throughout the galaxy. The response was silence. The Galactic Confederation, which claimed to represent dozens of peaceful species, marked the message as received but took no action. They cited territorial disputes and the complexity of interstellar law as reasons for non-interference. The Altarian Republic, humanity's closest allies among the alien races, sent a formal protest to the Zelthari Empire, but made it clear they would not risk their own military forces to help the human colony. The Zephyrian Trade Alliance, which had made billions of credits from human commerce, simply ignored the message entirely. But the message did not stop with the civilized powers of the galaxy. It continued traveling through space, reaching the outer systems, the frontier worlds, and eventually the ancient heart of human space itself. On Earth, in the deep underground bunkers beneath the Sahara Desert, the message was received by a communication, a ray that had been silent for over 2 centuries. The facility was officially classified as Historical Monument 7749C in the public records, but its true purpose was known only to a handful of people in the Earth government. General Patricia Blackwood was 67 years old and had been expecting this call her entire career. She had spent 4 decades in the Terran Defense Corps, working her way up through the ranks of humanity's most secretive military organization. She had fought in the border wars, commanded ships during the pirate suppression campaigns, and helped plan the defenses that had kept Earth safe for over 300 years. But she had never activated Protocol Omega, confirmed hostile action against human civilians. She said to the assembled officers in the command center, 50,000 non-combatants under direct attack. No military assets in the area. No possibility of conventional rescue. The room was silent except for the hum of quantum computers processing data streams from across the galaxy. These officers were the descendants of the men and women who had survived humanity's bloodiest wars, who had learned that peace was only possible when backed by overwhelming force. Recommendations? General Blackwood asked Colonel Marcus Kane, commander of Vind. The Reaper fleet stepped forward. He was a tall man with graying hair and scars that told the story of a lifetime spent in humanity's service. His uniform bore no decorations, no medals, no indication of rank beyond the simple silver eagle on his collar. But everyone in the room knew who he was and what he commanded. Full deployment, Kane said simply. Maximum response. General Blackwood nodded. Authorization code, Omega 77 Alpha. God help whoever made us do this. Across the Sol system, ancient machines began to wake up. On Luna, massive shipyards that had been mothballed for centuries suddenly blazed with activity. In the asteroid belt, automated mining facilities started producing materials that had not been manufactured in over 200 years. And in the deepest reaches of space, beyond Pluto's orbit, something that had been waiting in the cold darkness began to move. The Reaper fleet had been humanity's greatest secret and its most terrible weapon, built during the worst years of the species. Wars, when Earth faced extinction from alien invaders, it represented the absolute pinnacle of human military technology. For 3 centuries, it had remained hidden, a sleeping monster that Earth's leaders prayed they would never need to wake. But now, as reports continued to stream in from Kepler 442b, as the death toll mounted and the Zelthari continued there. Merciless bombardment of civilian targets. The decision was made. Asterisk. The monsters were coming off the leash. Colonel Kane stood on the bridge of the TDC Judgment, the flagship of the Reaper fleet, as the massive vessel emerged from its hiding place in the outer system. Around him, displays showed the status of 47 other ships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering, and each one capable of destroying entire planets. Fleet status report, Kane ordered. All ships online and ready for combat deployment, came the response from his communications officer. Quantum drives charged and standing by. Weapon systems armed and locked. Kane looked at the tactical display showing the location of Kepler 442b, over 800 light-years from Earth. At maximum quantum drive, the Reaper fleet could make the journey in 72 hours. But the colonists on Kepler 442b did not have 72 hours. Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump, Kane ordered. We're going to push the drives beyond their safety limits. His officers exchanged glances. Emergency hyperspace was incredibly dangerous, with a significant chance of catastrophic drive failure. Ships had been known to simply disappear during emergency jumps, torn apart by the unstable quantum fields. Sir, his navigation officer said carefully, at emergency speeds, we could be there in 18 hours. But the risk is acceptable, Kane interrupted. Those are our people dying out there. And the Zelthari are about to learn what happens when you threaten human civilians. The Reaper fleet vanished from the Sol system in a flash of twisted space-time, racing across the galaxy at speeds that defied physics and common sense. Behind them, Earth waited in silence, knowing that when the fleet arrived at Kepler 442b, the galaxy would never be the same. On the doomed colony world, Commander Sarah Chun continued broadcasting her desperate pleas for help, unaware that help was already on the way. Help that would arrive not with mercy or negotiation, but with the full fury of humanity unleashed. Asterisk when Earth unleashes hell. 18 hours after the Reaper fleet's desperate hyperspace jump, reality tore open above Kepler 442b like a wound in space itself. The quantum drives of 48 human warships screamed as they emerged from the unstable hyperspace corridor, their hulls glowing white-hot from the forces they had endured during the emergency transit. Colonel Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the TDC Judgment, watching the tactical displays update as his fleet materialized in the system. What he saw made his jaw clench with controlled fury. The planet below was burning. Massive fires covered entire continents where the Zelthari had been systematically destroying human settlements. The orbital monitoring stations showed that the bombardment had continued for the full 18 hours of the fleet's journey, with no pause for mercy or negotiation. Sir, reported Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez, his tactical officer, we're detecting 47 Zelthari vessels in system. They're arranged in a standard occupation formation around the planet. Kane studied the enemy fleet disposition. The Zelthari had positioned themselves like predators around wounded prey, their elegant bone-white ships arranged in perfect, geometric patterns that spoke of military discipline and overwhelming confidence. They're not even trying to hide, Kane observed. They think they're completely safe. That was about to change. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Commander Sarah Chun crouched in the underground shelter, listening to the screams of the wounded and the distant thunder of continuing bombardment. They had been broadcasting distress signals for almost a full day, and no help had come. The Zelthari were methodically destroying every human settlement on the planet, taking their time to savor their conquest. Dr. Morrison worked frantically to treat the injured. But medical supplies were running low, and the casualties kept mounting. Children who had been playing in the colony's gardens just yesterday now lay unconscious with severe burns. Parents who had brought their families to this world, seeking a better life, now faced the reality that they might all die together in this. Underground too? Sarah, Dr. Morrison called out, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. I'm picking up something on the emergency scanners. Energy signatures in orbit. Massive ones. Sarah grabbed the scanner and looked at the display. Her heart stopped. Dozens of new contacts had appeared in orbit, ships larger than anything in the Zelthari fleet. The energy readings were off the charts, showing power levels that shouldn't be possible for vessels of that size. My God, she whispered. What are those? Above the planet, Warlord Zexthan received the same sensor reports on his flagship. The bridge crew of the Zelthari vessel buzzed with nervous energy as they tried to identify the newcomers. Unknown vessels, this is Warlord Zexthan of the Zelthari Empire. He broadcast on standard diplomatic frequencies. You are interfering with a legitimate military occupation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response came not as words, but as action. The first human ship to fire was the TDC Retribution, a heavy cruiser positioned at the edge of the Reaper Fleet formation. Its primary weapons were quantum cannons that could punch through the hull of a planet, and when they fired, they lit up the darkness of space like captured lightning. The Zelthari flagship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a graceful predator confident in its superiority. The next moment there was nothing but expanding debris and the shocked silence of 46 remaining enemy vessels. This is Colonel Marcus Kane of the Terran Defense Corps, came the broadcast that followed, transmitted on every frequency the Zelthari were monitoring. You have attacked human civilians. You have murdered children. You have shown no mercy. The voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its measured precision. We will show you the same mercy you showed them. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The Reaper fleet had been designed for one purpose, to destroy enemies so completely that the mere threat of their deployment would prevent future conflicts. Their weapons were not merely superior to anything the Zelthari possessed. They were from an entirely different level of technological development. Quantum cannons that fired coherent streams of subatomic particles at near light speed, gravity, bombs that could implode entire vessels, plasma torpedoes that burned at the temperature of stellar cores. And most terrifying of all, the Reaper ships themselves seemed to phase in and out of normal space, peering behind enemy vessels or beside them, making conventional evasive maneuvers useless. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the TDC Vengeance, a destroyer that had been assigned to hunt down the Zelthari ships attempting to flee the system. Her vessel was smaller than the heavy cruisers, but it was faster and more maneuverable, designed for exactly this kind of pursuit. Target acquired, reported her weapons officer as they closed on a fleeing Zelthari cruiser. Enemy vessel is transmitting surrender codes. Vasquez looked at the tactical display, showing the Zelthari ship's frantic attempts to escape. Just hours ago, this same vessel had been participating in the bombardment of civilian targets. It had been firing on schools and hospitals and family homes. Fire, she ordered. The Zelthari cruiser vanished in a ball of plasma across the battlefield. The story was the same. The Zelthari fleet that had seemed so overwhelming just minutes before was being systematically destroyed by human weapons. That seemed to come from another universe entirely. Ships that had terrorized 100 worlds found themselves helpless. Against technology they couldn't even understand. Warlord Zexthan, his flagship destroyed, had transferred to a secondary command vessel and was desperately trying to organize a retreat. But every time his ships attempted to flee, human vessels appeared to block their path. The humans weren't just winning. They were ensuring that nothing escaped. Signal the human fleet, Zexthan ordered, his pride finally cracking under the weight of absolute defeat. Tell them we surrender. Tell them we will cease all hostilities immediately. The response came from Colonel Kane himself. Surrender denied. You wanted to show humans what happens to the weak. Now we'll show you what happens to those who threaten our people. The last Zilthari vessel was destroyed exactly 47 minutes after the Reaper fleet had emerged from hyperspace. In less than an hour, an entire alien battle fleet had been reduced to glowing debris orbiting the human colony world. Asterisk. But the Reaper fleet was not finished. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Zilthari ground forces had been conducting systematic searches for human survivors, dragging them from their hiding places for execution or slavery. They were methodical and thorough, working through the ruins of human settlements with the patience of apex predators. That patience proved to be their downfall, the first sign of the human ground. Assault was not the arrival of dropships or the sound of approaching aircraft. It was simply the sudden, complete silence of Zilthari communications across the planet. Ground units that had been reporting their positions and status every few minutes simply stopped transmitting. The human soldiers who descended from orbit were not like the colonists Zilthari had been hunting. These were members of the Reaper Ground Corps, elite troops equipped with powered armor and weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. They moved through the ruins of human settlements like ghosts, appearing behind Zilthari positions and vanishing before the aliens could respond. Sergeant David Rodriguez led a squad of Reaper infantry through the ruins of New Geneva, the colony's largest city. His armor sensors showed him the locations of 17 Zilthari soldiers conducting a cleanup operation in what had been the city's school district. Remember, he told his squad over their internal communications, these things were shooting at children, no prisoners, no mercy. The Zilthari never knew what hit them. One moment they were searching through the rubble of a human classroom, looking for survivors to capture. The next moment they were simply gone, their bodies vaporized by weapons that contained plasma at temperatures exceeding those found in stellar cores. Across the planet, the story was repeated hundreds of times. Zilthari ground forces that had spent hours terrorizing human civilians found themselves being hunted by soldiers who moved like shadows and struck like lightning. The aliens who had considered humans weak and cowardly learned too late that they had confused mercy with INCAPA-LAVY in the underground shelter. Commander Sarah Shun and Dr. Morrison watched their scanners in amazement as the energy signatures of Zilthari forces across the planet simply disappeared one by one. Sarah, Dr. Morrison said quietly, what are our people doing up there? Before she could answer, their communication system activated. The voice that came through was calm, professional, and absolutely reassuring. This is Colonel Kane of the Terran Defense Corps. All hostile forces in the Kepler 442b system have been neutralized. Repeat, all threats have been eliminated. Colony survivors are advised to remain in secure locations while our ground teams complete their sweep. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. This is Commander Chun. Colonel, I don't know how to. Thank you. No thanks necessary, Commander. You called for help. We came. But Kane was not finished. As his ground teams completed their sweep of the planet and confirmed that no Zilthari forces remained, he activated the fleet's long-range communication array. The message he sent was broadcast not just to Earth, but to every major government and military installation in the galaxy. This is Colonel Marcus Kane of the Terran Defense Corps, speaking for the human race. Today, the Zilthari Empire attacked a peaceful human colony. They targeted civilian populations. They murdered children. They showed no mercy to non-combatants. The transmission was picked up by monitoring stations across the galaxy. In the halls of the Galactic Confederation, alien diplomats gathered around displays showing the complete destruction of the Zilthari fleet. The same aliens who had ignored humanity's pleas for help now watched in stunned silence as the results of that decision played out. We responded to this attack with overwhelming force, Kane continued. We have destroyed the entire Zelthari occupation fleet. We have eliminated all enemy ground forces. We have done this not out of malice, but out of necessity. On a dozen worlds, alien military commanders studied the tactical data from the battle, trying to understand how 47 advanced warships had been destroyed in less than an hour by a fleet that had appeared from nowhere. Let this serve as a lesson to any who had threatened human civilians, Kane's message concluded. We are not the strongest race in the galaxy. We are not the most numerous. But we are the most dangerous when provoked. We protect our own. And we never forget. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. 3 days later, as rescue ships from Earth arrived to evacuate the wounded and begin rebuilding the colony, Commander Sarah Chun stood in the ruins of her office, looking up at the sky where the Reaper fleet maintained its vigil. Dr. Morrison joined her, his medical duties finally allowing him a moment of rest. Sarah, I keep thinking about what those aliens said. That humans were weak. Sarah nodded, watching as construction crews worked to clear the rubble from the colony's main street. They made a mistake. They confused our desire for peace with inability to fight. And now? Sarah looked up at the dark shapes of the human warships orbiting overhead, silent guardians ensuring that the rebuilding could proceed without fear. Now the galaxy knows the difference. Word of the Kepler 442b incident spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. The Reaper fleet had accomplished more than just a military victory. They had fundamentally changed humanity's position in galactic politics. Races that had dismissed humans as newcomers now studied Earth's defensive capabilities with new respect and considerable fear. The Altarian Republic, which had refused to help during the crisis, sent formal apologies and offers of alliance. The Galactic Confederation suddenly discovered that humanity's applications for full membership deserved expedited review. Trade agreements that had been stalled for decades were suddenly approved with remarkable speed. But in the deep bunkers beneath Earth's surface, General Blackwood and Colonel Kane knew that the real message had been received by those who needed to hear it most. The predators of the galaxy, the races that lived by conquest and cruelty, now understood that humanity was not prey. The galaxy had learned that humans were not warriors by choice, but by necessity. They preferred peace, but they were prepared for war. And when that war came, when their civilians were threatened and their children were in danger, they would respond not with mercy or restraint, but with the full fury of a species that had crawled up from the bottom of evolution's ladder by being tougher, more determined, and more dangerous than anything that tried to stop them. The message was simple and clear. Touch human civilians, and Earth will show you why they call us Deathworlders. And in the cold vacuum of space, the Reaper fleet continued its patrol, a silent reminder that some sleeping monsters should never be awakened.